And on Sports Center, we'll be going over our third mock draft of this 2020 offseason, and as you know, we've gone over two so far. We did a couple, of course, in February, and I think we did one in early March, but of course, due to the March Madness that we've been doing simulation-wise, we've not been able to do a third one, so it is a little bit late for us to be doing our third one, but I do still expect to do a couple over the next couple weeks. But yeah, today we're going to be going over our third mock draft. If you have any thoughts on this, be sure to let me know in the comments below. And we're going to go ahead and get started with our number one pick, and it's going to be Joe Burrow for the third time in a row. I mean, I just don't see the Cincinnati Bengals going with anyone else other than Joe Burrow. I mean, Andy Dalton at this point, I mean, he hasn't really been doing all that great the past couple of seasons, and I think Joe Burrow would be a great pickup. Once again, he's from LSU. He's a quarterback, and his 2019 stats were absolutely insane. I mean, 5,600 yards of passing, as well as 60 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and he had like 500 yards of rushing as well. So, yeah, Joe Burrow is like, he's the guy that you want to get at this point. I think the Bengals are going to go with him. Of course, their 2019 record was 2-14. And moving on to your number two pick, Washington Redskins will pick up Chase Young. He's from Ohio State, and he's an edge. 2019 stats, 46 total tackles, 16.5 sacks. And the Redskins' 2019 record was 30-13. And certainly for the Redskins, I mean, their defensive line last season was absolutely horrible. I mean, they just couldn't do anything. So I think having Chase Young on there would be a huge help, and it definitely helped build up their defensive line. Moving on to your number three pick, the Detroit Lions will pick up Jeff Okudah from Ohio State. Yes, he got two Ohio State players going in the first three picks. He's a cornerback, once again from Ohio State. 2019 stats, 34 total tackles, 3 interceptions, and 1 forced fumble. So yeah, he's a very, very good player, probably the best cornerback in this entire draft. But yeah, the Lions secondary over the past couple years has really been down. It's been one of their big downsides of their defense. So yeah, picking up Jeff Okudah would be huge for Detroit, in my opinion. Moving on to number 4, we got the New York Giants, and they're going to pick up Isaiah Simmons. He's from Clemson and is a linebacker, and quite honestly, he's probably the best linebacker in this entire draft. 2019 stats, 104 total tackles, 8 sacks, 3 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. And yeah, certainly for the Giants, I mean, their linebacking core has been a little bit weak over the last couple of years, so I think picking up Isaiah Simmons would be a huge help for them, and that certainly helped their defense in general. I mean, their defense was absolutely horrible last year. I mean, everyone knows that. So yeah, to pick up Isaiah Simmons, I think would be big for this defense. We got the Miami Dolphins, and this is their first of 3 picks that they currently have in the first round. So yeah, certainly Miami's going to pick up a lot of great players heading into this and heading into the 2020 season. But yeah, they're going to pick up Mekhi Becton. He's from Louisville, going to be the first offensive tackle to go in this draft. And quite honestly, to put it straight, the rebuilding the offensive line is a must for Miami in 2020. No matter which quarterback you got under center, you got to have a good offensive line, or else, I mean, it's not going to work out. We've seen that from many teams. I mean, you can have a good quarterback, and that's what can concern me a little bit about Cincinnati and picking up Joe Burrow. I mean, Joe Burrow is a fantastic quarterback, no doubt, and I think he's got a really, really great future. But just that offensive line, if they don't have a good offensive line there, Joe Burrow could likely have a lot of trouble there. Yeah, nonetheless, I think for Miami, picking up Mekhi Becton would be a huge addition to this offensive line. And the 2019 record for Miami was 5-11. Moving on to number 6, we got the Los Angeles Chargers, and they're going to pick up Tua. I think that Tua goes number 6 to the Chargers, and I've seen Tua all over the place in many mock drafts. I mean, many analysts have him going as like the 3rd quarterback, possibly even the 4th. But I think he goes at number 2 in this one. Of course, I've had it different in different mock drafts, but I have him going at number 2 in this one. He's from Alabama, obviously, he's a quarterback, and he's kind of risky. I mean, with him being injured last season, will he be an injury-prone quarterback? That's something you got to consider. Yeah, his 2019 stats while he played were not bad at all. I mean, he had 2,800 passing yards as well as 33 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, and that's the best touchdown-interception ratio I think in this entire draft. I mean, 33-3 is insane. Yeah, so Tua definitely has got a ton of potential for sure. But yeah, just the injuries. It'll be interesting to see whether or not he'll be an injury-prone quarterback. Chargers' 2019 record was 5-11. Moving on to number 7, we got the Carolina Panthers, and they're going to pick up Derek Brown, and he's from Auburn and is a defensive tackle. And you could also go with possibly the Panthers going for a quarterback here. That wouldn't surprise me, especially with Cam Newton now being out of Carolina. But of course, I think they'll be just fine with the new quarterbacks that they got coming in there. But of course, Derek Brown, I think rebuilding the defensive line is going to be a must for Carolina heading into 2020. And he's probably going to be the best defensive tackle in this entire draft. 2019 stats for him, 54 total tackles, 4 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. Panthers' 2019 record was 5-11. Very disappointing season for Carolina for sure. Moving on to number 8, we got the Arizona Cardinals, and they're going to pick up Andrew Thomas. He's from Georgia, and he's going to be the second offensive tackle to go in this draft. And Cardinals might lose 2 offensive tackles to free agency, so that would be a big problem for the Cardinals. And so I think that they'll pick up Andrew Thomas to replace them. And I think he'd be a really good replacement. Of course, you could go between him and Mekhi Becton. It'll be interesting to see. I think whichever offensive tackle that the Dolphins don't pick between Andrew Thomas and Mekhi Becton, that's who I think Arizona's going to go with in this position. I think they have to go with an offensive lineman at this point. I mean, yeah, it's really going to help their offensive line. And quite honestly, like, if they're going to have any chance of having a good offense, I mean, once again, this offensive line needs a ton of work. Cardinals' 2019 record was 5-10-1. Moving on to number 9, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars, and they're going to pick up Javon Kinlaw. He's from South Carolina, and is a defensive tackle. Will be the second defensive tackle to go in this draft. And his 2019 stats were 35 tackles and 6 sacks. The Jaguars' 2019 record was 6-10. And once again, same thing with the Jaguars. They really need a good defensive line if this team is even going to succeed. I mean, this defense is all right. They weren't great last year, but I think if they can fix up that defensive line, that would be huge for Jacksonville. Moving on to number 10, we got the Cleveland Browns, and they're going to pick up Jedrick Wills Jr., and he's from Alabama. He's an offensive tackle, and will be the third offensive lineman to go in this draft. And Baker Mayfield desperately needs a good offensive line if he will have success. I mean, just put it straight up like that. I mean, Baker Mayfield, I think, is a good quarterback. He really was a bit disappointing last season, not going to lie. But when we saw him in 2018, I mean, we saw how much potential he had. And I think if this Browns team can have a good offensive line, I mean, really, the sky's the limit for Baker Mayfield. I think he could have, he could put up some really impressive numbers. Our Browns' 2019 record was 6-10. Overall, pretty disappointing season overall for Cleveland in 2019. So it'll be interesting to see whether or not they can make a playoff run in 2020. Moving on to number 11, we got the New York Jets, and they're going to pick up AJ Espenza. He's from Iowa and is an edge, and his draft position is number 2. 2019 stats for him: 49 tackles as well as 11.5 sacks and 4 forced fumbles. And for the Jets, their defensive line, once again, I mean, they don't have all that great of a defensive line. And for many of these teams, rebuilding the defensive line is a must, in my opinion. I mean, having a good team definitely can start with the defense. And I think for the Jets, I mean, their defense was all right last season, but it definitely could be better. Their 2019 record was 7-9. Moving on to your number 12, it's going to be the Las Vegas Raiders. They're going to pick up CeeDee Lamb. He's a wide receiver from Oklahoma and will be the first wide receiver to go in this draft. And I've considered putting him up much further. I actually had him going to the Giants, I believe, at number 4. Yeah, at the number 4 pick in my first mock draft. I mean, CeeDee Lamb could be anywhere from in the beginning of the first round to the end of it. I mean, you could go either way with him. But yeah, he's going to be the first wide receiver to go. 2019 stats, 42 receptions for 1,300 yards and 15 touchdowns. Probably the best wide receiver, or close to it, in all of college football last season. The Raiders' 2019 record was 7-9. Moving on to your number 13, it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts. And this is where I think your third quarterback's going to go. Justin Herbert's going to be picked up by the Indianapolis Colts, and he's from Oregon, and he is a quarterback. And I've gone back and forth many times between Tua and Justin Herbert. I just can't decide. I think you'll see quarterbacks being picked up by both the Chargers and the Colts. But in this case, I mean, it's tough to say whether or not Justin Herbert will be going to Los Angeles or to Indianapolis. I think he's going to be going to one of those places. Yeah, he's going to be the third quarterback to go. 2019 stats, 3,400 yards as well as 32 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. The Colts' 2019 record was 7-9. Moving on to number 14, we got Tristan Wirfs going to Tampa Bay. And I had a quarterback going here as well in our second mock draft, but of course, as you know, big news of the past couple of weeks, Tom Brady going to Tampa Bay, and so they're going to pick up someone on the offensive line, in my opinion. I think if they can rebuild this offensive line, that's going to be huge for Tom Brady, especially. I think he's got a chance to have a really good season if this offensive line plays well for sure. So yeah, Tampa, obviously they need offensive line help if any quarterback under center will succeed. I don't care if it's Tom Brady or Jameis Winston. I mean, this offensive line needs a ton of help for sure. Tampa Bay 2019 record was 7-9. Moving on to number 15, we got the Denver Broncos, and they're going to pick up our second wide receiver of this draft, Henry Ruggs III. He is from Alabama and is a wide receiver. I think I had Henry Ruggs going to New Orleans in my second mock draft. So honestly, I mean, this is another position where there's a ton of uncertainty as to who's going to go first. But I've got Henry Ruggs III going at number 15 to the Broncos. He's from Alabama once again, wide receiver. In his 2019 stats, 40 receptions for 821 yards and 8 touchdowns. and the Broncos' 2019 record was 7-9. Moving on to number 16, we got the Atlanta Falcons, and they're going to pick up Kristen Fulton. He's from LSU and is a back, and his draft position is going to be number 2. This is the second quarterback to go. 2019 stats, 38 tackles for 1 interception, and the Falcons' 2019 record was 7-9. Once again, it was another really disappointing season for the Falcons back in 2019. I actually expected them to make a run for the playoffs. I think this team always just has so much potential. They just can't max that out. But I think having improvements, especially in the secondary, is going to be huge for the Falcons heading into 2020. Moving on to number 17, we got the Dallas Cowboys, and they're going to pick up Grant Delpit. He's from LSU and is a safety, and Grant Delpit could be all over the place, I think, in the later stages of our first round. I mean, I had him, I believe, at number 30. I think he went to the Packers in my first mock draft, and he was also in the late 20s in our second one. I've got him going at number 17 in this one to the Cowboys. Once again, I think the Cowboys secondary, it's definitely one of their weaker spots on their team, and I think picking up Grant Delpit will be a huge addition to this secondary. 2019 stats for him: 65 tackles, 2 sacks, 2 interceptions, and 2 forced fumbles. For the Cowboys in 2019, they were 8-8. Next up at number 18, we got the Miami Dolphins. They're going to pick up Clavon Chasen. He's from LSU, and he is an edge, going to be the third edge going in this draft. His 2019 stats: 60 tackles for 6.5 sacks and 1 forced fumble. And for the Dolphins, of course, this is their second of 3 first-round draft picks. So yeah, this team is certainly going to have a lot of young talent heading into the 2020 season. But yeah, I think Clavon Chasen has a ton of talent, ton of potential. I think for the Dolphins, I mean, their defensive line is one of their weaker spots on their team. So I think if they can pick him up, that'd be a huge addition. Moving on to number 19, we got the Las Vegas Raiders. They're going to pick up C.J. Henderson. He's from Florida and is a back, of course, the third back to go in this draft. And 22 stats from 33 tackles and 1 sack, and their 20 record was 7-5. And another thing for the Raiders, of course, their defense was all right last season. It was nothing special for sure, but I think if they can improve their secondary, that'd be a huge part in having this defense get to the point where I know they can get to. But yeah, for the Raiders, once again, this is their second first-round draft pick as well. So yeah, a couple of really good picks for sure are coming up for the Raiders. Moving on to number 20, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I went back and forth on this one between Jacob Eason and Jordan Love. Of course, we've seen Jordan Love going much earlier than I'm having him to go in many mock drafts. But of course, I'm going to have him pick up Jacob Eason in this situation. He's from Washington, and he is a quarterback. And I'm not sure why Jordan Love is so hyped up. I mean, he's got decent stats. I mean, he's got 3,100 yards, or actually he's got 3,400 yards, so really similar to how Jacob Eason has it. But he's got a 20-17 touchdown interception ratio. That's basically a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, and that is not something that you want. Of course, Jacob Eason, on the other hand, he's basically got a 3-to-1 touchdown interception ratio with 23-8, which that is actually really good. I mean, nothing compared to the Joe Burrow's 6-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. But yeah, certainly for Jacob Eason, he's got a ton of talent. I think he's going to go before Jordan Love in this situation. I mean, I've seen in some mock drafts, actually, people are having Jacob Eason not even going in the first round. They have him going in the second round. And to this, I'm so confused as to why that is. Yeah, the Jaguars' 2019 record was 6-10, and they honestly need a quarterback if this team is going to succeed. So I think they pick up Jacob Eason in this situation. Moving on to number 21, we got the Philadelphia Eagles, and they're going to pick up Jerry Jeudy. He's from Alabama and is a wide receiver, going to be the third wide receiver to go in this draft. And his 2019 stats: 1,100 yards as well as 10 touchdowns, and the Eagles' 2019 record was 9-7. And I think for the Eagles, no matter which quarterback you have under center, you got to have a good wide receiver core. And for the Eagles, they really haven't had that the last couple of seasons. So I think for Carson Wentz, this would be a really great addition for them. And Jerry Jeudy especially, I mean, he's got a ton of potential. He's a great wide receiver. So, yeah, either way, he would be a great addition for the Eagles, and I think they go with him. Number 22 is going to be the Buffalo Bills. They're going to pick up Yetur Gross. He's from Penn State and is an edge. 2019 stats for him: 40 tackles and 9 sacks, and the Bills' 2019 record was 10-6. And the Bills were a big surprise last season. I didn't expect them to go and pull off a 10-6 record. I mean, I expected them to be probably more like a 6-10 team, not a 10-6. But yeah, the Bills really looked really good last season, and their defense was good. I mean, of course, I think the defense really isn't all that big of a problem for the Bills right now. But I think for Yetur Gross, of course, being a really good defensive lineman in this draft, I think he would be a great addition to any team. And I think in this situation, since he's going to get pushed back a little bit, I think that he's going to end up going to the Bills here. Number 23 is going to be the New England Patriots, and I'm not very confident on this team. I mean, they could go with many players in this situation. I'm going to give them Cole Kmet right now. I gave him Cole Kmet in our second mock draft as well. But the thing is, though, now Tom Brady is out of New England. He's with Tampa Bay now. So, yeah, that's why there's so much uncertainty, in my opinion, with this pick. Of course, he's from Notre Dame. He's a tight end. And the reason why I had him going at this position in our second mock draft was because looking at how Tom Brady performed last season, it was much more declined compared to how he's been in the past. And a big chunk of that was because Rob Gronkowski retired before the 2019 season. So I think if they could pick up a tight end here, that would have been huge for Tom Brady. But now that Tom Brady's gone, who knows what they'll do with their 23rd pick right here. But yeah, the Cole Kmet, I think is who they're going to go with in this situation. I mean, they don't really have a tight end anyway, so if they could pick him up, I think that'd be good, and it kind of returned them to how it somewhat felt with Rob Gronkowski at least. His 2019 stats, once again, 43 receptions for 515 yards and 6 touchdowns. Patriots' 2019 record was 12-4. Moving on to number 24, we got the New Orleans Saints, and they're going to pick up Patrick Queen here, and of course, they had a good defense as well last season, but I think their linebacking core was probably, quite possibly, their worst part of their defense. And I think Patrick Queen would be a great addition. I mean, he's a hometown boy as well. I mean, LSU going to New Orleans. He has 2019 stats, 85 tackles, 3 sacks, and 1 interception. And so, yeah, he'd be a really great addition to any team. But in this situation, I think he goes to the New Orleans Saints. Saints' 2019 record was 13-3. Moving on to number 25, we got the Minnesota Vikings. They're going to pick up Trevon Diggs. He's from Alabama and is a back as well. 2019 stats for him, 37 tackles for 3 interceptions. And the Vikings' 2019 record was 10-6. And like many teams for the Vikings, I mean, their defense is all right, but definitely if they could add another really good weapon in the secondary, that'd be really, really helpful. And I think they go with Trevon Diggs in this mock draft. Number 26 is going to be the Miami Dolphins, and this is their third and final first-round draft pick. And they're going to pick up Jordan Love, in my opinion. He's from Utah State. He's a quarterback and will be the 5th quarterback to go in this draft. And his 2019 stats, 3,400 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions. And another thing that, once again, I know I mentioned this earlier when we were going over the Jacksonville Jaguars and picking up Jacob Eason. And many people are really hyping up Jordan Love, and I just don't understand why that is. I mean, if you could let me know in the comment section, I'd really appreciate that. But yeah, 22 stats for him, 3,400 yards. I mean, looking at his touchdown interception ratio, it's just terrible. I mean, it's basically a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, and I don't expect a first-round draft pick to go to someone with a 1-to-1 touchdown interception ratio. It just doesn't make sense to me. And his yardage is really good, no doubt on that, 3,400 yards. But you got to consider he's at Utah State. He's from Utah State, and they're a Midwest or a Mountain West conference team. And let me remind you, the Mountain West is not a Power 5 conference team, not even a Power 6 if you consider the AAC. So yeah, I mean, Jordan Love, 20 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, is not very impressive, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him get pushed back to the second round. But I think they're going to go with, I think the Miami Dolphins they need a quarterback. And in this situation, I think the top 4 quarterbacks are already gone. So I think they'll go with Jordan Love here in this situation. Dolphins' 2019 record, once again, is 5-11. Moving on to number 27, we got the Seattle Seahawks. They're going to pick up Terrell Lewis. He's from Alabama, and he's an edge. 2019 stats, 31 tackles and 6 sacks. And their 2019 record was an 11-5. And for the Seahawks, I mean, they have a decent defensive line, but it's nothing special. And I think if they could pick up Terrell Lewis, it'd be a big addition to their defensive line. Moving on to number 28, we got the Baltimore Ravens. They're going to pick up Kenneth Murray. He's from Oklahoma and is a linebacker. And for the Ravens, I mean, don't even worry about the offense for them. I mean, their offense was absolutely fantastic last season. But their defense does need a little bit of work, and I think Kenneth Murray would be the perfect guy to go with in this situation. 2019 stats for him, 102 tackles as well as 4 sacks, and their 2019 record was 14-2. The Ravens finished off as the team with the best record after the regular season in 2019. Moving into number 29, we got the Tennessee Titans, another big surprise team in 2019. I mean, considering they made it all the way to the AFC Championship game, I'm sure many people did not expect that. But they're going to go with Neville Gallimore, another Oklahoma guy. He's a defensive lineman, and his 2019 stats, 29 tackles for 2 forced fumbles. So yeah. Certainly, I think for the Titans, I mean, their defensive line was one of their more weaker spots in 2019. So I think if they can pick up Gallimore in this situation, that'd be a huge addition for them. Their 2019 record, once again, was 9-7. Moving on to number 30, we got the Green Bay Packers. They're going to pick up KJ Hamler here. And once again, for the Packers, I mean, last season, I mean, they were really good, but Aaron Rodgers just didn't look like himself for a good chunk of the season. And a good reason for that is because their wide receiver core is super young. I mean, they don't really have a veteran on their receiving core. And of course, Devontae Adams, you could argue that he is starting to get a little bit older, But yeah, I mean, he's still in his prime right now. And I think that now they got rid of Geronimo Allison and Randall Cobb's been out of there for a year, they just haven't been as good. And so I think if they can pick up a KJ Hamler, he'd be a huge addition. He's got a ton of potential, 2019 stats, 56 receptions for 947 yards and 8 touchdowns. So yeah, I think KJ Hamler would be a huge addition for the Green Bay Packers. Their 2019 record was 13-3. Moving on to number 31, we got the San Francisco 49ers, and they're going to pick up Xavier McKinney. He's from Alabama, and he's a safety, and his 2019 stats were really good, 95 total tackles, as well as 3 sacks and 4 forced fumbles. And the Niners' 2019 record was 13-3. They made it to the Super Bowl. And quite honestly, the Niners' defense is really, really good as well. I mean, their defense isn't really the problem. It's more that they need new weapons, and they also lost a couple of guys on their defense to free agency. But yeah, once again, their 2019 record was 13-3. I think McKinney would be a huge addition once again to the secondary for the 49ers. Moving on to number 32, your last pick of the first round, and it's going to be Jeff Gladney for the Kansas City Chiefs, and his college is TCU. He's a cornerback and will be, I believe, the 4th cornerback to go in this draft. 2019 stats for him, 31 tackles, 1 sack, and 1 interception. And for the Chiefs, once again, kind of similar to a few teams on this mock draft. One of their weaker spots on this defense is certainly on the secondary. I think if they can pick up Jeff Gladney, someone who's been really impressive in the past couple of years, that'd be a really good addition for Kansas City for sure. I think it could really make this defense one of the best ones in the NFL. Their 2019 record was 12-4, and that about wraps up our third mock draft of this 2020 offseason. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below once again on this. If you disagree with anything, be sure to let me know. I usually get a decent amount of hate on these videos just because there's so many options, there's so many disagreements, and that's totally fine. I'd like to hear your thoughts on these. But thank you guys all for watching once again. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. I'll try to get out a couple more mock drafts before the draft officially starts in the early parts of or in the later parts of April. So yeah, certainly, I'll try to get a couple more out to you guys before then. Of course, once again, with March Madness simulations going on, it's really thrown a wrench in my off-season plan. But yeah, thank you guys all for watching though once again. Stay tuned for more. I will see you all later.